The quaint city of Rochester, New York, once known for its picturesque parks and vibrant culture, became synonymous with terror in the early 1970s. This was a time when families would stroll through the parks, children played freely in the streets, and neighbors knew each other by name. The community was tight-knit, and the city exuded a sense of safety and warmth. But all of that changed in an instant, as a dark shadow cast its pall over the city. A string of brutal murders, each more horrifying than the last, sent shockwaves through the community and beyond. The first murder was a shock, but as the bodies began to pile up, the horror became palpable. The newspapers were filled with gruesome headlines, and the evening news brought the grim reality into every home. The city was in a state of panic, and the police were under immense pressure to catch the killer. The victims, young girls, their lives tragically cut short. They were daughters, sisters, friends, and classmates. Their families were left devastated, their communities in mourning. Memorials sprang up around the city with flowers, photos, and heartfelt messages. The loss was immeasurable, and the fear was all-consuming. The killer? A ghost lurking in the shadows, seemingly unstoppable. The police had few leads, and the community was left to wonder who among them could be capable of such heinous acts. The fear of the unknown gripped the city, and every shadow seemed to hide a potential threat. As the body count rose, so did the fear. The police increased their patrols, and the community became more vigilant. But despite their best efforts, the killer remained at large. The sense of helplessness was overwhelming, and the city was on edge. Parents clutched their children closer. Suspicion clouded every interaction. The once friendly neighborhood gatherings were now filled with tension and mistrust. Every stranger was viewed with suspicion, and the sense of community began to erode. The once safe streets of Rochester transformed into a breeding ground for paranoia. People locked their doors and windows, and the streets that were once filled with laughter and life became eerily silent. The fear was palpable, and the city was gripped by a sense of dread. The city held its breath, united in fear and desperation. Community vigils were held, and people came together to support one another. But the fear was always there, lurking in the background, a constant reminder of the danger that loomed over them. Who was this monster preying on their children, and would they ever be brought to justice? The police released sketches and asked for the public's help, but the killer remained elusive. The community was desperate for answers, and the fear of the unknown was overwhelming. The killings, dubbed the alphabet murders due to a chilling pattern connecting the victims, became a morbid obsession for the nation. The media coverage was relentless, and the nation watched in horror as the story unfolded. The pattern was chilling, and the name alphabet murders became synonymous with fear and tragedy. The mystery deepened with each passing day, the killer's motives shrouded in darkness. The police worked tirelessly, but the clues were few and far between. The investigation was a labyrinth of dead ends and false leads, and the sense of frustration was palpable. This wasn't just a local tragedy, it was a chilling reminder of the evil that can lurk beneath the surface of any seemingly peaceful community. The city of Rochester would never be the same, and the memory of those dark days would haunt the community for years to come. The alphabet murders were a stark reminder of the fragility of safety and the ever-present potential for darkness in our world. The alphabet murders? Even the name itself sends chills down your spine. It evokes a sense of dread, a reminder of a time when the streets of Rochester were gripped by fear. The city, usually bustling with life, was overshadowed by a dark cloud of terror. 3 young girls, all abducted and murdered within a span of 2 years, their names forever linked by a disturbing pattern. These were not just random victims, they were children with dreams, families and futures that were brutally cut short. The community was left in shock, grappling with the horror of such heinous acts. Carmen Colon, Wanda Wolkowitz, Michelle Menzer. Their initials, the first and last name starting with the same letter, became a haunting calling card for a killer who seemed to vanish into thin air. Each name, each face, a stark reminder of innocence lost and the evil that lurked in the shadows. This wasn't a random act of violence, it was a deliberate, calculated display of cruelty. The killer's actions were methodical, each step planned with chilling precision. The community was left to wonder who could commit such atrocities and why. The killer's method was cold, precise, and terrifyingly efficient. Each abduction was carried out with a level of skill that suggested a deep understanding of human behavior and forensic science. The police were left with few clues, each one more perplexing than the last. Each victim was abducted in broad daylight, their bodies later discovered in remote locations, posed with an eerie meticulousness. The killer seemed to take a perverse pleasure in the act, leaving behind a scene that was as haunting as it was horrifying. The community was left to grapple with the fear that anyone could be next. The killer seemed to revel in the terror they inflicted, toying with the police and leaving a trail of fear and despair in their wake. Taunting letters and cryptic messages only added to the sense of dread as the authorities struggled to piece together the puzzle. Decades have passed, yet the alphabet murders remain unsolved. A haunting testament to the darkness that can fester in the human heart. The case files gather dust, a stark reminder of the lives lost and the justice that remains elusive. The city has moved on, but the memories linger, a ghostly presence that refuses to fade. The victims' families, forever scarred by the loss of their loved ones, cling to the hope of justice, of finally getting answers to the questions that have haunted them for years. They hold vigils, keep the memories alive, and continue to seek closure. The pain of their loss is a wound that never fully heals, a reminder of the fragility of life and the enduring quest for justice. Carmen Colon, a bright and bubbly 10-year-old, was the first victim. She was known for her infectious laughter and her love for playing with her friends in the neighborhood. Her disappearance sent shockwaves through the community. On November 16, 1971, she disappeared while running an errand for her grandmother. It was a routine task, something she had done many times before, but this time she never returned. Her body, bearing signs of sexual assault, was found 2 days later, discarded in a ditch miles away from her home. The discovery was a devastating blow to her family and the entire community, who had been holding out hope for her safe return. The brutality of the crime shocked even the most seasoned investigators, but little did they know, it was just the beginning. The case remained unsolved, leaving a lingering sense of fear and uncertainty. Wanda Wolkowitz, a vibrant and independent 11-year-old, vanished on April 2nd, 1973, while walking home from school. She was a responsible child, known for her love of reading and her dream of becoming a teacher one day. Despite an extensive search, her remains weren't discovered until September. The delay in finding her body added to the agony of her family, who had been desperately searching for any sign of her. She had been sexually assaulted and strangled, her body left on a hillside, exposed to the elements. The manner in which she was found was eerily similar to Carmen's case, raising fears of a serial predator. Michelle Maenza, a quiet and artistic 11-year-old, was the last confirmed victim. She loved to draw and often spent hours creating beautiful sketches. Her gentle nature made her disappearance all the more heartbreaking. She disappeared on November 26, 1973, while walking home from a friend's house. It was a short walk, one she had taken many times before, but on that day she never made it home. Her body was found 3 days later, dumped in a wooded area. The discovery was a grim reminder of the dangers lurking in the shadows, and it sent waves of fear through the community. Like Wanda, she had been sexually assaulted and strangled, her body posed in a hauntingly similar manner. The similarities between the cases were undeniable, leading investigators to believe they were dealing with a serial killer. The community was left in a state of perpetual fear, wondering if and when the predator would strike again. The disappearances and murders sent shockwaves through Rochester, shattering the city's illusion of safety. The once familiar streets and parks now seemed ominous, each shadow harboring potential danger. Parents became afraid to let their children out of sight, fear gnawing at the edges of every interaction. Schools implemented stricter security measures. Children were taught stranger danger like a chilling mantra, and a palpable sense of unease settled over the community. The killers' brazenness, their ability to snatch victims in broad daylight and vanish without a trace, amplified the terror. Newspapers ran daily updates, each headline a stark reminder of the predator lurking amongst them. The alphabet murders became a constant topic of conversation, a shared nightmare that bound the community together in fear and grief. Every parent, every child, every resident of Rochester was forever marked by the tragedy. If you like this video, please comment, like, and share.